Hey, we love video games, but every once in a while we gotta complain about them. Here we have 20 of the worst video game endings ever. Now, keep in mind, this is subjective. This is just our collective opinion here, the gameranx team. You might like these endings, that's fine. We're not dunking on you, but either way, we're looking forward to hearing some of your personal picks in the comments. Anyway, let's get started off with number 20. 2023's Modern Warfare 3 was already a compromised game. It ain't good, but that ending. This is already a series that isn't known for its coherent, always high quality storytelling. When it hits, but when it misses, it really misses. Look, we're really just here for the action movie schlock, and that's mostly what these games end up delivering. It's not usually a thinking man's campaign, but usually there's enough like booms and bangs and entertaining set pieces to keep you playing for a while. So you gotta lower your standards a little bit when we're talking about Call of Duty stories, but even looking at this game with rock bottom expectations, the whole thing just falls short, man. It's somehow even shorter than your average campaign and full of obvious padding with levels that are clearly just chunks of Warzone maps cut into chunks and dumped into the campaign. The story could have been decent in an actual finished game, but it goes absolutely nowhere and ends on like the most half-assed cliffhanger possible. The last mission in Isolation is pretty decent. It's a terrorist attack that you have to stop that would have made a solid middle of the game type of mission. The problem is that this is where they decide to end the game. Like, you start dismantling the bomb in the train tunnels, then suddenly the bad guy Makarov shows up, shoots series regular Soap, and bounces. Your hardcore special forces team just stands around there like total chumps afterwards. They don't even chase after him. It kind of just feels like a cartoon. The bad guy runs away and they just stand there like, oh, we'll get that no good Makarov next time. It just feels so lame. Playing for this first time is like, yeah, that was disappointing, but okay, let's get to the next mission. And then, why is everyone standing on a cliff spreading Soap's ashes? Is this the end of the game? That's it? Yeah. That's it. The game doesn't really end so much as just abruptly stop. The train runs off the track, so they just roll credits to paper over the fact that they really don't have a proper ending here. Even the post-credit scene is disappointing. Man, what a mess this one was.
Take this to hell with you, Captain. Never bury your enemies alive.
Next, over at number 19, everybody loves Silent Hill 2, but very few games can pull off the balancing act that game managed to achieve with the ending. It's both shocking, inevitable, and adds a layer of psychological depth to the story. It's widely regarded as having one of the best stories in a horror game, and its influence on the genre can't be denied. Everyone wants to copy it, to do their own spin on the Silent Hill 2 story, but the problem is that nobody's any good at nailing it. So many horror games try to go down this, psychological angle and just fall flat on their face. Most just end up being boring, but Supermassive's take on the Silent Hill formula really has to be seen to be believed here. The premise is good. A group of teenagers and teachers are passing through the town of Little Hope. The bus breaks down, some spooky fog rolls in, and everyone gets lost. Eventually, the characters start getting transported to the past for a typical Salem witch trials thing, and people start getting picked off by monsters. So far so cool, but it's all fairly bland stuff, A lot of generic wandering around with not a lot of plot progression until the ending comes and just slaps you right in the face with this inevitable twist. See, the bus driver that disappeared right at the start of the game was actually the main guy the entire time. Everyone else was just a figment of his imagination, which is revealed in the absurd scene where we find out that, yes, this bus driver was inexplicably driving a completely empty bus the entire time. Look, I guess you could justify this all with like a Jacob's Ladder twist, with the bus driver being dead or dying or something, but no. He's just apparently a crazy man driving an empty bus around in an entirely real world. Depending on the choices you made, our buddy either finds acceptance or doesn't. Who cares? The actual ending doesn't matter that much. The twist is really all that we can think about because it basically just invalidates like 60% of the game at least. The entire Salem witch trials plot was completely pointless. All the characters in both the past and present never existed. It was all just kind of a big waste of time. Look, a cool twist can be cool. It was fairly cool, but in the context of the whole story, what are we doing? Next, over at number 18, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands. If there's one thing that the people at Ubisoft inexplicably love to do, it's end their open world action games with deeply unsatisfying endings that really made the entire 30 to 50 hour journey feel kind of like a waste of time or some busy work. I don't know what they're trying to do, if like they're trying to subvert your expectations or what. I can't divine what their intentions are, but like one thing I can say is that they're just not good at it. The ending of Wildlands is a perfect example of this bizarre proclivity to end their games in the most disappointing way imaginable. The plot to the game is really simple, you know? There's an absurdly evil cartel, and you have to dismantle it, boss by boss, to then get to the big final boss man himself. The big bald baby that is El Sueno. This kind of personality-free drug lord. Seriously, this guy leaves zero impression. He's not an exciting villain, but this game seems to think like he's the ultimate badass chess master who's always 5 steps ahead of the special forces guys. Like, that leads to the endings. There are actually 2, and they're both stinkers, but somehow the true ending, the one where you get 100% completion and completely dismantle the cartel, is the worst one, which, like, I guess I'd call it audacious if it wasn't so lame. Okay, so you finally confront El Sueno, but he's got protection. He made a deal with the government behind your back, so you can't kill him. That's the ending. You drive up to his compound, you know, this cliched 80s action movie thing happens, and you bring him in. Man, what a satisfying conclusion, huh? Really made all the effort tearing down the cartel across this whole country just feel like it was worthwhile, huh? Yeah, only it gets worse. The final cutscene reveals, through the narrator, speculating about future events for some reason, that El Sueno is going to just cut loose from government supervision and start a whole new cartel with blackjack and hookers, and it'll be called the Rebirth, and it'll be even more badass and more powerful than ever before. Look, this is so weird and stupid on a lot of levels. It's the world's dumbest and most unnecessary sequel tease that they never even follow up on anyway. They even made a sequel, but took it in a completely different direction, so that says a lot, and there really wasn't any reason for any of this. Next at number 17, Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. Nomura has so much to answer for. Look, the games are great. We love them, but the stories in his games are silly, overwrought. They emphasize coolness over coherent storytelling at every turn, and generally don't make a lot of sense. Sometimes it works, like for most of the Kingdom Hearts games, and sometimes it really, really doesn't. Like with this slop, like the third birthday here. Look, we've talked about that game's ending enough to fill like 20 lists, so we'll spare you the little girl body swapping and inexplicable police raids for something that's either the best ending we've ever seen or the worst. Look, I don't know if we're supposed to laugh at or with Stranger of Paradise still. We had fun with it. Like, I do think there's a little bit of self-awareness with the game's brand of over-the-top grimness. It's funny at first, hearing the little 8-bit cartoon Nightman Garland, the guy who said he would knock you all down back on the NES using swear words and slashing his enemies to bloody ribbons. It's cool if you're nostalgic, but by the end of the game, things really take a decidedly Nomura turn, where they just cannot decide if Jack Garland is supposed to be a bad guy or a secret good guy or what.
Better than good. Only Jack can fight like that.
Glad to see he's back. Took long enough.
What?
The entire final segment of the game is just a total mess of character motivations and inexplicable plot contrivances. Like, why bother trying to add a tragic element to the story of an 8-bit game whose story could be found on a napkin with room to spare? I didn't need to know that the elemental fiends were actually all best buddies, or that Garland actually somehow manufactured the Warriors of Light or something. Like most of Nomura's stories, this is more of a vague approximation of storytelling where characters just sort of motion toward doing stuff and we're supposed to read it as significant. even if the logic really doesn't make a lot of sense. And I mean, again, I buried the lead here. The amazing thing about the game is that it's not even really a Nomura game. He's not even a credited writer on the game, but his Axe body spray stink is really all over this thing. I guess that's why it doesn't really work that well. You can't go full Nomura without the man himself.
Agent Garland, you are hereby discharged. Goodbye, Jack. Lufenia thanks you for your service.
You give Central a message of resignation for me.
Next to number 16, this may be a case of beating a dead horse, emphasis on the dead part, because the ending isn't even canon anymore here. We're talking about the original ending of Fallout 3. It's not even part of the game. By default, you're getting the Broken Steel DLC included anymore, which replaced the original ending entirely. And while the DLC stuff definitely feels like a tacked on add-on, it's still a hell of a lot more satisfying than how Fallout 3 originally wrapped up. The ending is infamous for one simple reason. The writers really want you to do a heroic sacrifice, but the sacrifice makes no sense and is deeply unsatisfying on pretty much every level. The final mission is pretty great, just mowing down Enclave goons with the help of a giant robot. That's awesome. That's so solid. The bad guy really is a total nobody, just an absolute nothing of a villain. So you take him out really easily, and then it's time to shut down Project Purity. There's a problem though. The chamber is full of deadly radiation, so if you go in there to save the day, then you will die in the process. It's such an out of nowhere, unsatisfying sacrifice. There's very little build up to it, and if you do it, then you just kind of keel over in the room. Yeah, this ain't Star Trek 2, folks. Nobody's getting out their handkerchief for this dull thing. It's a pretty lame ending as is, but what makes it worse is that you have a super mutant friend. Like, these guys are immune to radiation. That's their whole thing. So they could have just gone in there and done the whole thing for you. Only, at least in the original version, Fox refuses to enter the chamber. In as many words, he tells you that the writers really want to end things on a heroic sacrifice. So even though it makes perfect sense for the super mutant to go into the radiation chamber, he just won't do it because destiny. It's almost more insulting that they even try to justify him not doing it. Like, it just makes Fox look like a huge asshole. They did make it possible to send a different character into the chamber who will die in your place, but if you do that, then you get called a coward by Ron Perlman. So there's just no winning with that. I mean, you know, the Broken Steel DLC, like I said, mostly fixes all this stuff, but it doesn't entirely erase the stain of the game's original terrible conclusion.
My immunity to radiation makes me a far better candidate for surviving in there.
Next at number 15, Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain. Look, you complain how long the ending to Metal Gear Solid 4 was all you want. I'd take that 100 times over what we got with Metal Gear Solid 5 here. 4 may have had, to some, a lot of story, like maybe too much, but 5 feels like half the story is just missing. Look, I know there's debate about whether or not it's actually missing or if it was all part of the plan. Either way, it just doesn't feel great as a story. Phantom Pain is less a game that ends, and it's more like it just kind of stops. This is a series that, for the most part, at least knows how to wrap things up with a big cinematic climax, and that's what makes whatever is supposed to be going on here all the more unfortunate. You want to know what the final mission is in Metal Gear Solid 5? I'm still so salty about this. Like, the thing that puts a bow on the whole sordid Metal Gear Solid saga? Oh, it's just really, it's the first mission again, where you crawl around on the floor. You have to replay that entire hospital segment again in all its excruciating detail. That's the final mission of the game, given with no setup and no fanfare. You just do a few replay missions in whatever chapter 2 is supposed to be, and then you get the truth, which is literally just the first mission in its entirety with a little bit extra stapled onto the end to reveal the big twist. Look, I'm not even hating on the twist. The reveal that Punished Snake is actually a different guy given facial reconstructive surgery and mental conditioning isn't entirely terrible. It's actually kind of cool, and it fits with Metal Gear. If this game had a more fleshed out story with like some actual cutscenes and real real characters that go places, this reveal could have been way, way cooler. Unfortunately, it falls a little flat. That's also ignoring the fact that huge story events just go unexplained, like Liquid steals a Metal Gear and then nothing happens. They should have called this game the Phantom Plot. Hey, nobody's ever made that joke before, right? Anyway, let's move on. Next at number 14, Rage. Speaking of games that just end, this is the 2011 award winner for Best Sleep Aid because it has one of the worst, most insulting, kind of rushed feeling endings of a game that we've ever played. Look, we know that when they were making this, they were obsessed with megapixels and barely seemed to care about the actual game part. It was all about the visuals at the time. But it would have been nice if the folks at id to actually, I don't know, have some sort of climax here. It's not like this thing is story free either. It's got lots of dialogue about how you have to like stop the evil authority from taking over the wasteland or whatever, but then at the exact moment the game feels like it's starting to ramp up and hit its stride and get a little interesting, the game ends. The final objective of the game is to reach the satellite uplink to reveal the location of all the arcs or whatever, and you'd correctly assume that reaching this system would be some kind of challenge, like it would be located at the heart of enemy territory. So when you enter the outer wall of the authority's main city, you assume, that you might actually get to explore that city, fight some new enemies, maybe do some quests. Expectations are pretty high when you first get a glimpse of that gigantic high-tech city. This last third of the game could be awesome. Then you walk down a few corridors, you go up an elevator, and oh, there it is. That's the satellite uplink. It's just here in this random hallway, right in the wall outside of the city. Okay, well, this is probably just one step of the mission, the whole plan, right? No, you goof. You thought this was the game, but like you actually paid for what is an expensive tech demo. That's the end of the game here. This tiny room where some generic monsters attack you while you wait for the satellite thing to happen. You press a button, and that's the ending. No main bad guy, no storming the castle, no big cinematic thing, just wandering around some generic hallways and a wall, and then you press a button. There are so many games with disappointing, half-baked endings where it's obvious the developers, had to give up last minute, really just wrap things up, maybe budget, time, I don't know, but most games still at least feel better than this. Next at number 13, Gears 5. Look, this game in a lot of ways is a return to form after the kind of middling Gears 4. The story has some serious problems, but hey, this is Gears, you can forgive some things, you can get over some things, as long as the shooting is satisfying and the levels are fun, full of cool set pieces and stuff, then we're all good. Unfortunately, Gears 5's ending just ain't that interesting. A big issue is how inconsequential this all feels. Say what you will about the old games, but they made sure you were aware of the stakes. This game just really feels like it's going through the motions. You're killing big monsters because you have to. Oh, there's a new queen just because, and here's the part where for some bizarre reason they decide to include a moral choice where you have to decide which of the main characters lives or dies. In a Gears of War game, which has never really had choices in them ever, like this kind of just comes out of nowhere. It's a total downer and adds absolutely nothing to the final 20 minutes or so left in the game, which involve a second fight with the big monster you fought like an hour ago. The final boss is just a rematch fight with a random monster. Basically nothing gets resolved by the end of the game, and it just makes the entire journey feel pointless except for like one interesting reveal. And it's not like they're actually going to do anything with the sadistic choice. Like at this point, I don't know if they're even going to make a Gears 6. Really with this one, like again, the choices and choosing who lives or dies, it just, why did any of it really matter at all? Why did they make us do this? The Gears of War campaign stories can surprisingly hit some emotional beats pretty well, and this one just did not at all, if that's what they were going for. Next at number 12, Bionic Commando from 2009. Okay, look, we all know about the arm, the big twist at the end of the game, it's where the bionic arm of the character contains the soul or something of Spencer's dead wife. It's funny, it's stupid, it's goofy, it's unnecessary. The concept alone is ridiculous. The wife is Arm is just funny to say. You know, you need zero context to just laugh at that. What you might not know is that in this scene where the embarrassing truth is revealed, it actually happens like 2 minutes before the actual ending of the game. The final chapter of 2009's ill-fated Bionic Commando remake is like 5 minutes total. It's absolutely short and clearly pretty rushed. Like, this is the developers packing things in. They're 2 weeks past the deadline and they have to give Capcom something, anything, just to make sure that the game is done with. This is the sort of ending you get because discs are being stamped yesterday, and it shows. Not just because of like the Super Joe out of nowhere heel turn and insane wife arm reveal, but also that terrible QTE final boss. And total nothing of an ending. Nothing is really resolved. I don't even know what's supposed to be happening. It all just feels dumb and rushed, and it's unfortunate.
Emily.
I never left, Nathan. It's you who was lost.
I never wanted you to be involved in this.
Next at number 11, before coming out, this game, 12 Minutes, looked like an intriguing indie game with a simple but exciting premise. There's a guy breaking into your house, you got 12 minutes, figure it out. It sounds like an intense experience, and the celebrity voice cast added some gravitas to the home invasion drama.
Anyone else?
It's a mistake.
Come on out.
Please don't hurt me.
Anyone else here? Husband, boyfriend, girlfriend.
It seemed kind of like a home run kind of game, but then everyone actually played it and never really talked about it again because it's not very good. The story starts off fairly grounded and plausible, but quickly devolves into pure soap opera nonsense when it's revealed, and I'm not kidding here, that the bad guy and his wife are secretly brother and sister, and the wife didn't kill her father, but the husband did because of really convoluted circumstances. Basically, once it's revealed that getting Willem Dafoe to leave you alone isn't the solution to the time loop, the game starts getting real stupid real quick. They save the worst twist for last, though, where you find out that this entire game, like, it's just insert a huge sigh here, man. It was all a dream. Yes. Not to read Word Up magazine, though. Seriously, they go to that well and they play it completely straight. Apparently, this whole thing was just part of the mental conditioning your guy went through to forget that he did stuff with his sister. Look, I guess they were trying to go for kind of like an old boy thing or something. I don't know. It just doesn't work. At number 10, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It was all leading up to this. 100 hours of meandering around England, helping out various provincial noble fail sons and tedious, weird Viking lords, all leading up to this epic, baffling conclusion. Look, most Assassin's Creed games have fairly weird endings. Some of them are pretty solid though, some of them are forgettable, but you usually know what it's all leading up to. With Valhalla, there was nothing, and after this confusing and bizarre ending, I'm left feeling nothing. So in the end, it's revealed that Basim, the dull as dishwater assassin master who's been helping you out, is actually another sage, one of those precursor civilization guys that reincarnates in the body of a human being. Look, if you haven't been following the series for a while, that's where we're at now. So in the conclusion of the game, you encounter Basim at the Lotus Eater machine place that can take you to Valhalla. It's sort of like an ancient animus, and Basim fights you in a not actually all that bad final boss, only to get trapped in the machine. Cut to 1,000 years later, and Basim is still attached to that machine, and he convinces future protagonist Layla to use the machine for some reason. It's all sci-fi gibberish at this point, which then leaves Layla trapped in the computer while Basim walks free in all his 3 Wolf Moon t-shirt glory. I actually like that. I think that's kind of cool. Look, the modern day assassins don't know he's actually a bad guy, and that's where the game ends, with Basim as some sort of double agent for the bad Isu or something. His motivation isn't really that clear, like just about everything that has to do with the mess that is Assassin's Creed's modern day plotline lore stuff now. Maybe if they directly address the ending in the next game, it wouldn't be so bad, but of course they don't. The modern day story really is messy at this point, and it's a shame because I always thought it had some potential.
I'm with you.
It worked perfectly, my dear.
Next at number 9, Call of Duty Ghosts. Yes, we're doing 2 Call of Duty games on this list. Deal with it. With the way the stories of these games go, you're lucky there aren't any more. But before the Modern Warfare 3 remake came to blight our hard drives, the other official worst COD was Ghosts. You know, the multiplayer was messy, but the campaign is one of the worst in franchise history, which is saying something. The plot was generic, bad guys get super weapon, we have to get super weapon back. And the bad guy was utterly unconvincing, and the mission design wasn't really the best. It wasn't all terrible. There were a couple of cool missions here and there, but it was ultimately just not that great. A bit more forgettable. It would have been just okay if not for the insulting bad ending, which shoehorned in one of the most impossibly contrived cliffhangers we've ever seen in any form of media. So at the end, you encounter this, like, you know, the middle-aged guy who's a little too into Sons of Anarchy type villain called Rourke, named as such because honestly he looks like Mickey Rourke, and shoots him square in the chest with the world's most gigantic gun.
Logan!
Then the train you're on crashes and gets flooded with water. In a world that doesn't run on narrative convenience, this guy is 100% dead. So you drag your also shot brother onto the beach. You defeated the bad guy, happy ending, fade to black, only inexplicably Rourke is still alive and he's gone like full Jason Voorhees. He breaks your arm and drags you off, and that's when the game fades to black. If this whole thing just ended a minute earlier, it would have been fine. Ghosts had like a forgettable but okay campaign, but then they threw that dumbass ending at us with a completely needless cliffhanger that takes the balding middle-aged man bad guy with a paunch and plumber's crack and turns him into the Terminator just so they could have their stupid last-minute ending twist, and I guess tease a sequel that never happened.
But that's not gonna happen. There ain't gonna be any ghosts. We're gonna destroy him together. Logan.
Now at number 8, speaking of downer endings, we're talking Resistance 2. The late 2000s, they just loved their misery games. I don't know what was going on at Insomniac that made them decide to make their second Resistance game the most hopeless and bleak game ever, but maybe a writer was just having a bad week or something. Or maybe they just saw how misanthropic Call of Duty games were getting with stuff like Modern Warfare 2 and just jumped on the bandwagon as hard as they possibly could. But actually, Resistance 2 really beat Modern Warfare or anything by like a year. Like they came first here with this. So I guess, I don't know, they just wanted to take things super grim, super serious. It was like really pushing the no fun allowed button as hard as they possibly could. The entire story of Resistance is one of nonstop failure. Like nothing you do ever succeeds. All the defenses that you try to throw at the Chimera to stop them just fail. Every mission ends with someone or everyone dying. It's just relentless. By the time you fail for like the 5th time, and this means like literally like hundreds of millions of people will die, it just comes off as a sick joke. They're saving their best part for last though. After beating the final boss and temporarily stopping something, I don't know, I guess you destroy the invasion fleet, but of course it doesn't matter. They've got 100 more invasion fleets ready to go. Your main guy finally starts succumbing to the alien infection, so he gets shot in the head. That's the end of the game. You just die. Nothing you did mattered, and now you're dead. That's the ending to our fun and exciting video game. Yeah, it's a pointless downer that drags the rest of the game down. Look, I love a thinking man ending. I like a bleak ending, but this one just, this one was a lot. We like Resistance 2. It's still a fun game, but the story, and especially the ending, it just kind of drags the vibes down.
Hale? What happened? What the hell is that? Can you hear them? They are calling to us. It's beautiful. Stay back. This is just the beginning. Forgive me, sir. It was an honor.
Next at number 7, Platinum Games. Like, they're often generally not very good at endings, but at least they're usually entertaining enough to make up for the flat stories. But Vanquish, even though we love the game, it can't pull off the ending, man. The rest of the game is so good, but it just all falls apart at the end for a needlessly grim ending where absolutely nothing is accomplished. There really was just something in the air in the late 2000s, man. Game developers just wanted to make sure you were fully aware that nothing you do matters, everything sucks, and screw you on top of it all. Look, the ending to Vanquish is just insulting. The smug, stupid-looking Russian agent behind the terrorist attack, he gets away after gloating for a while. The space station blows up, the president kills himself, like, and not in a Shawshank kind of way. They were barely a presence in the story, so it just ends on this unpleasantly dark note before instantly transitioning into space shooter credits while playing cartoonishly heroic victory music. Is this supposed to be like a sick joke? Or were they really tone deaf? I don't know. Either way, it's an unsatisfying ending where nothing is really resolved, setting up a sequel that I think at this point, it's fair to say, may never happen. Next to number 6, I'll give Far Cry 5 this, that at least the ending is audacious. It's definitely memorable, but that doesn't make it really that good. You probably know the gist of it by now. This thing is infamous. At the end of the game, after battling cult leader Joseph Seed in his weirdly small compound, seriously, there's like hundreds of cultists. How did they all fit in this place? You see them all through the game. It's revealed his doomsday prophecy was real, and the end times are upon us, and the nukes are falling out of the sky. He was right. So you do what anyone would do in this situation, of course. Grab the religious maniac and shove him in your police car. Just because it's the end of the world doesn't mean you're not gonna do things by the book, right? So everything explodes, the world ends. It seems like basically everyone else that's with you ends up dead, and then when the game fades in, you find that Joseph Seed has you handcuffed to a bed, and he's looming over you like a lunatic. So yeah, sure, I guess it was good to bring him along, huh? That's the ending. Everything you did up to this point was pointless. All the good guys are presumed dead, and the main antagonist has you locked up with him in a bunker somewhere. Literally every objective you were trying to achieve in the game failed spectacularly. It's surprising, I'll give him that. It's unexpected, but it's kind of a bummer. Like, the entire game, you're this unkillable badass in the gameplay, and then in the cutscenes, like, you're a little weak. What happened? Like, it's so infuriating to listen to all, like, the sanctimonious guys whine at you for their extended monologues, and then that's how the game ends, with another overly long, tedious guy moaning about things. Like, with the way your character acts the rest of the game, you should be able to snap this little twerp like a twig, but somehow he managed to overpower you and handcuff you? Sure, whatever, okay. Next at number 5, with a game like 2008's Alone in the Dark, it's hard to say it falls apart at the end when it was kind of a wreck from the start, but still, that ending, man, what a mess. The new one also strays into this territory, but this one really takes the cake. The plot was already rushed and incoherent. By the end, when you're finding some ancient guy and immediately driving across Central Park for an out-of-nowhere final confrontation with the bad guy, only to immediately get thrust into a nonsensical ending choice, the whole thing just feels like it kind of gives up. The whole final maybe 10 minutes of the game are just a whirlwind of exposition, trying to explain whatever is meant to be happening, but failing miserably at it. First, they load you down with hours and hours of tedious padding to get to the ending, and then when they give it to you, it's like 5 minutes long and barely has any gameplay to speak of. At least we get the legendary "I'm the Lightbringer" line. That's at least memorable. It's absolutely laughable, both endings, where either Carnby or his girlfriend get possessed by Satan for reasons that are really goofy as hell, but the Carnby one is at least funnier.
The last free act of man was murder.
So was his first free act.
You're not a man anymore.
I'm the Lightbringer. I'm the universe.
Next at number 4, this is like the ultimate in unsatisfying conclusions. This game, 13, really was a fun little spy caper. Kind of more like a modern, you know, at the time, version of GoldenEye with a unique comic book inspired visual design. It was something else. It was a fun game with good shooting, plenty of twists and turns. It's all good fun, other than some of the annoying stealth sections up until the end, which ends up wrapping up with one of the most infuriating cliffhangers of any game ever. You manage to stop the nukes, get the girl, it seems like everything is resolved, but you still have some blanks in your memory, and you still don't know who number 1 is, the leader of this whole conspiracy. It seems like the story is getting ready to wrap up, then the truth is revealed. Your buddy and the brother of the President of the United States, Walter Sheridan, is actually the head of the conspiracy. Cue flashback where you find out his identity, which leads to the start of the game where you washed up on a beach with no memories. So he was the guy responsible. Wow, what a revelation. And now Walter is walking in with armed goons. It seems like things are actually heating up. Like now we're heading into the, actual finale of the game. Only then it fades to black. This isn't the big third act twist. This is just the end of the game. It's all just a big sequel hook that will never be resolved. It's been 20 years. I can't believe they did a remaster, but like they're not making a sequel. At the very least, the comic that it's based on, that's a thing if you want to actually see what happens. Now at number 3, man, remember this? Fable 2? What an unbelievably disappointing ending to what is otherwise a pretty awesome game. The whole final segment of Fable 2 is disappointingly perfunctory. Like, you just go to the spire where there are no enemies, enter the chamber with the main bad guy, the guy who killed your sister, and you either just use a music box on him or do nothing. And someone else will kill him for you. Seriously, this is a final quote-unquote boss where you are in less than 0 danger. You can do literally nothing and he'll die no matter what. It's just one of the most anticlimactic endings I've ever seen. I've played adventure games with more satisfying final battles. I've played walking simulators with more satisfying final encounters. This one really is just weak. The actual ending isn't that great either. You just pick one of 3 choices and that's about it. There's not a lot of build-up, not a lot of stakes. It's just one of the endings where it feels like nobody really cared. The villain here is just such an afterthought that he can die entirely without your input. It doesn't even matter. Easily one of the worst, let's just get this over with type of endings ever. At least that's how it felt. Now down at number 2, Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. This game should get a special award for not just having 1, but 2 terrible, unsatisfying endings. The first is the standard ending, the one you get for finishing the main story campaign before transitioning into the live service post-game stuff. That one sucks because it feels like it's more about selling you on the live service stuff and like it's not really trying to actually tell a satisfying ending. The entire game is about how the Suicide Squad don't want to be here, how they want to get away, and how hopeless of a situation this is. And then suddenly we get to the end and now they're salivating over getting loot and fighting Brainiac over and over again in the multiverses and being heroes. Why? That just doesn't sound appealing to me. Fighting Brainiac once was bad enough. I mean, the final boss of the campaign is just the Flash over again. It's shameless. And then they dump all this on you. The game is trying to sell something that nobody's buying. All the live service stuff feels completely out of place with the story. You've heard all of this before, The premise does not match up with the game. Like, it's just a mess. And it somehow got worse with the real ending, the one they released with the final content drop for the game after it became clear that they were not going to recoup their investment on this turkey and they were not going to keep putting out seasons where a long-term story is told. The standard ending was bad, but at least it's a proper cutscene. Not this junk that's just essentially a slideshow of images where it's revealed that all the Justice League members were clones. Don't worry, everything's fine, guys. Batman is fine. It's okay. Sure, the Batman clone may have killed Dick Grayson and Wonder Woman and all the Justice League allies are still dead, but don't worry, Batman is alive, okay? We didn't screw it up. We didn't kill off one of the most incredible characters ever being voiced by one of the greatest voice actors ever in a really dumb way. No, it's all retconned, maybe. Look, all of it is so rushed and cheap looking, it's obvious that this wasn't meant to be their original plans for how things played out, but they had to put something together because it was very clear that the game was no longer going to get support. In a way, I do respect the fact that at least they tried you know, there was potential for the story, but it was just far too little, far too late, and poor execution. And that second ending makes everything you did seem even more pointless. Like, why did the squad act like they were all the real deal? Why put so much gravity into each hero's death if they were just clones the whole time? Again, we've talked this one to death. It was the internet's punching bag for a long time, so let's move on.
We must escape with our quarry.
Do you plan to carry him the entire way to Earth 1?
Who says I can't?
Squad 5. Tiny Brainiac, 0.
Now at number 1, speaking to the internet's punching bag, back in the early days, it was Mass Effect 3. Yes, what else could it be? No, it's not literally the worst ending of all time. There are honestly far worse endings on this list, but it is maybe the most disappointing ending. Even the biggest Mass Effect 3 apologists, and we actually count ourselves among that number, have to admit that the ending just isn't that good, man. Like, this trilogy should have ended triumphantly, but instead, we got a space AI child and a big wet fart. The entire ending to the game feels weirdly rushed. The entire Assignment Earth section should have been epic, but it's over in no time, and the final confrontation with the elusive man is honestly where the game should have ended. It could have been decent if things wrapped up there, but instead we go into weird, like, straight up space babies and make absolutely no one happy. I don't want to talk to the voice of the Reapers or anything. This whole character is embarrassing and unnecessary and just kind of really drained the narrative momentum out of the end of the game. It's just kind of one big plot dump where the main antagonists of the series take over the narrative to explain to your dumbass what's going on before offering you 3 contrived narrative endings that aren't really that satisfying. Why are we listening to all this in the first place? Oh, because the game forces you to, even though, like, any sane person, I think, like, some of these choices, it's like, why would you pick this? I don't know. It just, anyway, the presentation of all just really sucks all the fun out of the conclusion. There's room to go in less shooty bang bang directions for the end of the trilogy, but this isn't it. This kid is annoying. The Reaper's motivations just really aren't that great and completely fall out of step with the story beats of the other games. At least that's how it felt at the time. Nothing about this really feels like a natural extension of the narrative of Mass Effect. It just feels like somebody trying to hijack things last minute to tell their synthetics versus organic sci-fi story that was never really the top line of what Mass Effect was about. At least not for us. The choices are lame, like I said. It makes it feel like none of your choices to this point really mattered. And the actual ending itself is weirdly ambitious, and also kind of a downer, no matter what direction you go in. It's just a bad ending all around that didn't just make Mass Effect 3 seem worse in retrospect, it kind of made the entire trilogy worse.
So be it.
The cycle continues.
But the strength of these games are still so good that you can power through that. That original ending to Mass Effect 3, though, it was kind of unfortunate. Definitely divisive, for sure. But either way, we're looking forward to hearing your guys' thoughts in the comments. Games with some disappointing or just unsatisfying or just downright the worst endings. Agree with us, disagree with us, let us know, but really we want to hear your picks because we could talk about bad endings forever because it turns out video games have a bad habit of really not sticking the landing on endings. Let's talk about this stuff. If you like this video, clicking the like button helps us out. We appreciate it, man. We put out videos every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.